Stephen A. Smith begins his case by saying very directly that it has reached a point where it makes sense to tell LeBron James that he should go back to Cleveland and finish his career there. The reasoning here is not complicated, but it is extremely powerful. LeBron has spent 2 different chapters of his career with the Cavaliers. The first was his rise to superstardom, when he carried teams that had no business being in the finals all the way to the big stage. The second was his return from Miami, where he made good on his promise and delivered a championship that ended decades of heartbreak for the city of Cleveland. Now, Stephen A. is saying the third chapter should be the ending, the grand finale that ties his story together and leaves no questions about loyalty or legacy.
Getting specifically to LeBron, it has gotten to a point. I think it warrants, yo, bro. Why don't you just come back to Cleveland to end your career?
Stephen A. Smith follows up by making a bold competitive claim. He says that LeBron James would actually have a better chance of winning another championship in Cleveland than he does in Los Angeles. This is not just about nostalgia, it is about basketball reality. The Lakers are in a brutal Western Conference filled with powerhouse teams like Denver, Golden State, and Dallas. Every playoff run in the West is a gauntlet. On the other hand, Cleveland is positioned in the Eastern Conference, where the road to the finals is statistically easier. The Cavaliers already have an exciting young core with Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Donovan Mitchell, a group that has shown flashes of brilliance but lacks the veteran leadership to take the next step. Add LeBron James to that mix, and suddenly the Cavaliers would not just be contenders, they would be favorites. Stephen A. is pointing out something that often gets overlooked when people compare LeBron's options. At this stage of his career, it is not about who can pay him the most or who has the biggest spotlight. It is about winning. LeBron is chasing history. He has already broken the scoring record. But what would truly elevate his legacy would be tying or surpassing Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan in championships. Los Angeles does not give him the best shot at that anymore. The roster is aging, the fit is questionable, and the West is unforgiving. Cleveland, on the other hand, has youth, depth, and the hunger that comes from a team on the rise.
This cannot be disputed. He'd have a better chance of winning the championship in Cleveland than he would in LA.
Stephen A. pushes his argument further by saying that if LeBron James were to return to Cleveland, the Cavaliers would immediately become the favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference. He emphasizes that in order to win a championship, you only need 4 wins in the finals. The point he is making here is simple but devastatingly effective. LeBron joining Cleveland shortens the path to another title because in the East, the Cavaliers would have a clearer route to the finals compared to what the Lakers face in the West. Once you get there, all that stands between you and another ring is 4 wins.
If LeBron James came back to Cleveland to come out of the East, and you only need 4 wins to win a championship.
When Stephen A. Smith points out that LeBron James needs to return to Cleveland and bring one last championship there before saying goodbye, he is striking at the core of legacy. There is a poetic rhythm to that thought, and it is not just analysis, it is a challenge. Cleveland is where LeBron's story began, and though he delivered them their first championship in 2016, the wounds from his earlier departure and the reality that he has never completely dominated the league in the way Jordan did still remain open. By saying LeBron should go back, Stephen is emphasizing that Los Angeles will never give him the same immortal narrative that Cleveland would. In Los Angeles, he is a guest. In Cleveland, he is a king. If LeBron truly wants to be remembered with the aura of greatness, not just as an incredible player, but as a symbol of triumph and loyalty, then his story must end where it started. Michael Jordan returned to Chicago again and again to define his greatness. LeBron must do the same if he wants to solidify a legacy that otherwise feels fractured.
You bring the chip back to Cleveland, and you say goodbye 5 times.
When Stephen A. Smith highlights the possibility of LeBron tying Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan with 5 championships, it sounds tantalizing. But then he slams the door on that dream by saying it is impossible in Los Angeles because the Western Conference is too stacked and LeBron will not come out of it. This is a brutal but honest reality check. Michael Jordan was never boxed in by a conference so competitive that his dominance could be questioned. He owned the Eastern Conference in the 90s like it was his personal kingdom. LeBron, however, has always been defined by the teams he joins and the environments he runs to. He left Cleveland for Miami when Boston and Orlando had him locked down. He returned to Cleveland when Miami burned out. Then he went to Los Angeles when the Warriors ruled the West. At every step, LeBron has needed to adjust his chessboard to give himself a chance. Jordan never did that. Jordan beat everyone who stood in front of him.
Champion, tying Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan and the crew, if you stay in LA, because you ain't coming out of the West.
Stephen's final statement in this sequence is sharp and unrelenting. He says that if it is LeBron James 4 wins away, no matter who is on his squad, then it should be possible. This is not just commentary. This is the very definition of greatness. Michael Jordan never asked for excuses. He never begged for ideal teammates or perfect rosters. He took whoever was on his squad and he transformed them into champions. LeBron, on the other hand, has constantly been defined by his teammates. His wins are tied to super teams, to star duos, to perfect conditions. Jordan's wins are tied to his willpower, his leadership, and his refusal to lose. That is the gap that Stephen is exposing here. When you are truly in the GOAT conversation, you are expected to carry the weight of expectation without compromise. Jordan could win with Scottie and role players because he elevated everyone. LeBron is expected to need Anthony Davis at full strength or another superstar added. That is why Stephen's quote cuts so deep. 4 wins away is not a Herculean task for the greatest of all time. For Jordan, it was a formality. For LeBron, it feels like an impossible mountain. And that difference in perception is exactly why the world will never treat him as Jordan's equal. Stephen is reminding us that the GOAT standard is not about comfort. It is about results. If LeBron cannot deliver championships regardless of circumstance, then the conversation ends. Jordan did it. Kobe did it. Duncan did it. LeBron is still pleading for the right squad. That weakness in itself shows why his pursuit of Michael Jordan will always fall short. Legacy is measured in moments when the odds are stacked against you, and Stephen is making it clear that Jordan thrived in those moments while LeBron struggles.
LeBron James, 4 wins away with whomever you got.
Stephen A. Smith's statement that if LeBron James were back in Cleveland, the Cavaliers would instantly become the favorites, and LeBron would remind people that he is here to win championships instead of chasing Hollywood dreams, is not just analysis. It is a warning shot. What Stephen is saying is that LeBron's priorities have shifted. When he was younger, when he first returned to Cleveland, there was no debate about why he was there. He was there to bring his city a championship, and he delivered on that promise. He carried Cleveland to heights it had never experienced in professional basketball. He gave the Cavaliers their first NBA title, and he did it against the juggernaut Golden State Warriors. That was LeBron in his purest form, a competitor obsessed with winning basketball games and building a legacy through rings, not entertainment projects and lifestyle opportunities. But when LeBron made the move to Los Angeles, the narrative changed. Suddenly, it was not just about basketball. It was about Hollywood productions, media ventures, and life after basketball. That is where Stephen's criticism comes into focus. If LeBron truly wanted to remind the world that he is a championship-driven player, a man who will sacrifice comfort and glamour for the grind of basketball immortality, he would go back to Cleveland. He would join a Cavaliers team that already has young, talented pieces and could instantly become the favorite in the East with his leadership. The East is not the minefield that the West is, and with LeBron's presence, Cleveland could leapfrog into contention. Stephen's point is brutal but honest. LeBron cannot be the man of Hollywood and the man of championships at the same time. He must choose. And if he chose Cleveland, he would once again embody the essence of a winner who puts the game above all else. But in Los Angeles, the message is diluted. The lights of Hollywood shine brighter than the spotlight of the NBA Finals. And that is why Stephen sees this as a wasted opportunity. The world would remember LeBron James as the player who went home again, who redefined his career by prioritizing basketball above everything else. Instead, they see him as a man torn between legacy and lifestyle. That is the harsh reality Steven delivers.
LeBron was back in Cleveland. Cleveland is the favorites, and then he would remind people he here to win championships instead of going Hollywood. Because you ain't winning a championship in LA. He already won a chip.
Stephen A. Smith's next point is cutting. He argues that LeBron could have been a 5-time champion, standing shoulder to shoulder with Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. That is monumental company. To tie those legends would have elevated LeBron into a rarefied air of not just greatness, but ultimate validation. Yet Steven insists it will not happen as long as LeBron stays in Los Angeles, because the Western Conference is simply too difficult. This is a statement that attacks both the reality of the NBA landscape and LeBron's career decisions. Kobe won his 5 championships by never leaving the Lakers, by weathering the storms of rebuilding, and by proving time and again that his obsession with winning was greater than any outside influence. Tim Duncan, quiet and unassuming, became the foundation of the San Antonio Spurs dynasty, racking up 5 rings with patience, loyalty, and relentless focus on the game itself. These men represent consistency and excellence. Steven's criticism of LeBron is that he could have joined their ranks, but instead, his choices prevented it. By remaining in Los Angeles, LeBron is shackled to a Western Conference where the talent runs deeper than anywhere else. The Warriors, Nuggets, Mavericks, and Suns are roadblocks. And at LeBron's age, those mountains are nearly impossible to climb consistently. In the East, the road is clearer, the obstacles fewer, and a player of LeBron's caliber could realistically still dominate. Steven paints the West as a cage where LeBron cannot win another title, no matter how great he still is individually. That is why the conversation is about missed opportunities. If LeBron had chosen differently, if he had prioritized legacy and championships over lifestyle and location, he could already be in the same conversation as Kobe and Duncan in terms of rings. But because of his choices, he is stuck watching those opportunities slip away. That is the essence of Steven's frustration. LeBron James is a once-in-a-generation player, yet he may never join the 5-time champion club. Not because of ability, but because of decisions. That is what makes this so devastating to his legacy.
The road to prosperity is hard. It's much easier in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season.
Stephen A. Smith then sharpens his focus even further by pointing out that LeBron James is just 4 wins away. 4 wins away with whatever squad he has, 4 wins away with whatever help surrounds him, 4 wins away from changing the entire narrative of his career. That statement is both inspiring and damning. Inspiring because it highlights how close LeBron remains to immortality. Damning because it shows how he cannot seem to bridge that final gap. Think about it. 4 wins is a single playoff series. 1 dominant run through a finals matchup, 1 stretch where everything aligns, and LeBron could add another title to his resume. Yet it does not happen. Why? Because the environment in Los Angeles is not built for winning. The roster is unstable, the chemistry inconsistent, and the Western Conference unforgiving. Steven's frustration comes from the simplicity of the math. A player of LeBron's stature, skill, and experience should be able to will his team to 4 wins. He should be able to overcome the odds just once more, yet every season it ends in disappointment. That is why Steven frames it this way. LeBron is not being asked to reinvent himself. He is not being asked to dominate an entire playoff run like he did in 2016. He is only being asked to capture 4 wins, to push past 1 more obstacle, and to prove that he is still capable of delivering championships. But because of where he is, because of the decisions he has made, those 4 wins are mountains instead of hills. That is the tragedy of LeBron's current path. He is close enough to taste greatness, but he keeps falling short. And the more it happens, the clearer it becomes that he may never get those wins. Stephen A. Smith frames this in a way that is both brutal and accurate. LeBron is 1 playoff series away from silencing critics, 1 playoff series away from shifting history, but those wins never arrive. That is why his legacy will always be one of greatness tinged with what could have been.
LeBron James guy, all right, for since the beginning until the end.
Number 2 all time. Number 2 all time.
When Marcus Spears made this statement, he was tapping into one of the most powerful ideas in sports history, the the notion of a legendary final act that seals a career forever. Spears was envisioning the possibility of LeBron returning to Cleveland, the place where his NBA story began, and capping it off with one more championship before walking away. That would be more than just a title. It would be a cinematic ending, a sporting fairy tale that would forever stand as a testament to legacy. But before we glorify this idea, let us remember that even though it sounds dramatic and inspiring, Stephen A. Smith immediately undercuts it with his blunt reality check that LeBron will never be higher than number 2. And that is important because no matter how beautiful that sports story would be, it would not change the hierarchy of greatness. For Cleveland, a return would be historic. The city worships LeBron like a savior because he was the man who ended a 52-year championship drought. Imagine if he were to do it again at the twilight of his career. It would elevate him even more in the eyes of those fans, solidifying him as a forever icon in the region. But while that would be majestic, it still would not compare to Jordan, because Jordan's story never required a dramatic comeback to restore glory. Jordan left, returned, and still proved that winning was not conditional. He was the embodiment of dominance, not the architect of a feel-good movie. Spears' line is poetic because it illustrates what many fans crave: closure, nostalgia, redemption. But Smith's interruption serves as the necessary anchor. The romantic idea of LeBron's return to Cleveland to ride into the sunset is compelling. But the reality is that it would be more about narrative than absolute greatness. It would not redefine the GOAT debate, it would only enrich the Cleveland chapter of LeBron's career. And this is where Stephen A's brilliance shines. He knows how to cut through sentiment and remind everyone that storytelling does not rewrite history. Cleveland may see a hero, but history still sees Michael Jordan as the unshakable number 1.
Let it be, all right? But coming back to Cleveland and winning a championship and then riding off into the sunset would be one of those sports stories.
Can I add this?
When Stephen A. Smith describes LeBron as a godlike figure in Cleveland, he is acknowledging the deep emotional and cultural bond between the player and the region. Cleveland does not just admire LeBron, they revere him because he gave them something they had not tasted in over half a century: the sweet release of a championship. In that city, he is untouchable, he is immortal. He is the man who restored hope. Smith is not denying this. In fact, he is embracing it because sports is not just about numbers and stats. It is about connection and identity. For Cleveland, LeBron is not just a basketball player. He is a symbol of deliverance. But while Cleveland may see him as godlike, Stephen A. is reminding the world that basketball is bigger than one region's devotion. Jordan's impact was not confined to Chicago. His dominance radiated globally. He was not just beloved in one city, he was feared and admired in every corner of the basketball world. This is the critical difference. Cleveland may bow to LeBron like a deity, but Jordan was worshipped everywhere as the universal standard. LeBron deserves love for his loyalty, his legacy, and his accomplishments in Cleveland. The city has every right to treat him like a legend because he changed their destiny. But when we talk about godlike, Stephen A. is hinting at something more profound. Jordan was basketball's god. He was the player other gods measured themselves against. Cleveland has their king, but the world had its Jordan. That is why Stephen A.'s statement is so sharp. It gives LeBron respect where he deserves it, but it also leaves no doubt that reverence in Cleveland cannot replace reverence across the globe.
He is beloved and should be because of what he did for this area, what he did for this city, what he did for this name. There's nothing, he is a godlike figure in these parts as well. He should be. And to come back.
Stephen A. Smith then delivers another dose of realism. He strips away the grandeur of LeBron's possible return and brings us back to the harsh truth. LeBron James is not a long-term solution anymore. At this stage of his career, he is not building dynasties. He is not anchoring franchises for decades. He is a short-term, high-impact piece. And when a player is in that role, the franchise is no longer in the driver's seat. The franchise cannot afford to be picky or demanding because everything depends on LeBron's personal decision. If he wants to leave, he leaves. If he wants to stay, he stays. This is not about a team pushing him out. It is about LeBron deciding when he is finished. This is an essential point because it highlights the difference between LeBron and Jordan. Jordan never played the game with the idea of being a temporary solution. He was the long-term plan. He was the foundation. Wherever he played, whether it was Chicago or Washington, he dictated culture, success, and fear. He was not a mercenary chasing opportunities. He was the general creating them. LeBron at this stage has power, but it is not the same kind of power. It is the power of choice, not the power of permanence. Stephen A. makes it clear. Cleveland, Los Angeles, or anywhere else cannot be choosy because the ball is in LeBron's court. But no matter how much control LeBron has over his ending, it does not change his place in history. He may choose when to leave, but he cannot choose to rewrite the hierarchy. Jordan was the immovable number one.
LeBron ain't a long-term plan. So again, they're not in but so much of a position to be choosy if he wants to leave. It's about him wanting to leave. It's not about you pushing him out. I'm not advocating that the Lakers push him out.
In the end, what we see in these final reflections from Stephen A. Smith and Marcus Spears is the balancing act between narrative and reality. The narrative of LeBron returning to Cleveland and closing his career with a championship is beautiful. The narrative of Cleveland worshiping him like a god is touching. The narrative of him holding the power to decide when his journey ends is undeniable. But the reality, as Stephen A. insists over and over, is that LeBron James is number two. Always number two. Always behind Jordan. Jordan never needed to create poetic endings because his dominance was the poetry. Jordan never needed to be beloved in one city because he was revered across the globe. Jordan never had to negotiate short-term mercenary status because he was always the centerpiece, the foundation, the unquestionable alpha. This is the hard truth that Stephen A. Smith never lets anyone forget. LeBron has his place, he has his legacy, he has his moments of godlike reverence. But when history writes its final chapter, Michael Jordan is forever the greatest of all time.